Good afternoon. You're listening to Usula Radio. My name is Drew Murray, and I am the host of the Republican Zone, coming to you from my house in Logan Square during this COVID-19 pandemic. And I have my friend John Nungesser, who is running as a state rep, similar to me, but he is running for the legislative 177th district. Is that correct, John? Did I get that district correct?
Yes, sir. 177.
All right. So welcome to my show, John. Thank you for coming on. We met
Thanks
each other a couple times, but not that often. You're a lot younger than I am, so you're probably somewhat new to the political arena. Just give me some background. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? I mean, we're Philly, right? Where'd you go to high school, or what parish you're from?
So yeah, I grew up Port Richmond, born and raised, right in the district here. 25 years old. So like you said, I'm still really new to the political arena. I have not been around it a whole lot. So this is my first outing into politics, if you will. Uh,
I'm 48, and I just got involved last year, so I'm a newbie as well.
Man, and that's what politics needs, is new blood,
Yep. And you're born and raised. What high school did you go to?
Roman Catholic.
Oh, you're right. I didn't know you were a Catholic. All right, nice. And what parish?
St. Anne's Parish down in
St. Anne?
Port Richmond. Yep.
Okay, all right. I went to St. Joe's Prep, so
I won't hold that against you.
yeah, I would say who do you know? You probably do know. God, what's his name? Chuck Taylor. Chuck Taylor, around your age?
John Taylor?
Chuck Taylor.
Oh, Chuck Taylor. Yeah,
Chuck
yeah,
Taylor,
yeah.
like the sneaker. Yeah, I worked with him on my neighborhood side with Parks and Recs, helping him out because Roman has a field that they use in my neighborhood right near the art museum. Actually, so I've dealt with Chuck, but yeah, I'm a lot older than you. I actually played against Marvin Harrison in football, so that's how Marvin Harrison Sr. So Marvin Harrison has a son at the Prep now, but that's how old I am. I played against Marvin in high school.
Oh, lucky you.
So,
or not lucky you, I should say.
no. Yeah, I was one-on-one against him a lot. I was a linebacker, and it was not easy. So he was the man amongst boys, as I used to say. But so what made you? You're obviously, so I should say you're a Republican.
Yes, sir.
I assume you do not have a primary challenge, correct?
No, I do not.
Gotcha. So have you been a Republican your entire life? Like I was actually a Democrat most of my life. So I was registered when I was in college, which is probably 1994. And then I switched over about 2 years ago to a Republican. Have you been a Republican your entire, not life, but your registered adult life?
Ever since I was about 20 years old, yeah, I was a registered Republican. I've always had conservative values, though.
Gotcha. What kind of made you want to run? What made you kind of say, hey, not only am I a conservative, but I want to run for this specific office, state rep?
The state of city politics is brutal right now, man. I mean, you got district attorney Krasner letting people out on the streets for no good reason. You got, a mayor who's just taxing everything. Next thing you know, we're going to have an air tax and a water tax and all that stuff. I mean, it's just such blatant, like they don't care about the people in the city anymore. And that's why I feel like I said earlier, like we need new blood in politics, to mix things up every now and then, and I feel like the city hasn't had that in a long time.
Well, they definitely don't have a diverse view in politics. That's for certain. I mean, every state rep is a Democrat except Martina White. So we only have one Republican state rep in the city. Most city council members, there's only two city council members, David O. and Brian O'Neill in the Northeast, who are Republicans. So there's no diverse viewpoint when it comes to politics in Philadelphia. And I tell people, even who are Democrats, and I know a lot of Democrats, I used to be one, they'll say this is not where we should be. One of the purpose of the two-party system is that you have some level of diversity of opinion in city council and state rep. Now, on a state level, there is diverse opinion because there are actually more Republicans and Democrats. But yeah, I would say on a city municipal level, we have no diverse opinions on city council, state rep, state senators, or any of those.
Drew, we're outnumbered 8-1. There's 118,000 Republicans in the city. Where's the representation for them?
Yeah, and how is my district is one of the worst. Mine I think is 9-1 in the 182nd. You know what what the 177 is probably a little better, right?
7-1.
7-1. Yeah, if you don't know it exactly, believe me, it's not.
Yeah,
It's almost you want to forget it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, we got a good shot as anybody, you know.
Yeah, and so you're running the 177th. Who's the incumbent right now?
Joe Hohenstein.
So it is Joe Hohenstein. Okay, so you ran. Have you talked? Do you know Patty Pat at all? Have you talked to Patty Pat since
I have
jumping
not had
in?
the chance to speak with her yet. You know, everything kind of went off the rails once the campaign really got up and running.
Yeah, no. Yeah, Patty Pat's a friend of mine from my Parks and Rec. She used to work at Parks and Rec. She was going to win last cycle, or was it 2 cycles? Whatever cycle it was. I think it was 2. I think it was 1 cycle ago. Maybe it was 2. But yeah, she worked hard. I thought she was definitely the better candidate than Joe, and I don't know Joe well, and I'm not saying that because I'm a Republican. I just really, I thought she would have been good, and she's a great person. She's funny as hell if you've ever spoken to Patty Pat. She could be a stand-up comedian, that's for sure.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I got nothing personally against Joe Hohenstein. He seems like a nice guy. The time I met him before, but I mean, yeah, I don't believe he's a true representative for this district. You know, this is a very blue collar district, a very hardworking area, and I feel like, you know, for a blue collar neighborhood, you should have someone blue collar representing them. You know,
sure. No, you know, and interestingly enough, so when I ran for city council last year, well, Patty Pat was one of the first people I called. I said, "Where can I get signatures in the river wards?" And so she showed me exactly where to go, and it was mostly Bridesburg. If I needed 1,000 signatures, I got 1,500. I needed 1,000. I would say 600 came from Bridesburg, and a little bit into Port Richmond, but mostly concentrated in Bridesburg. So this time last year, I spent every weekend in Bridesburg, and most nights. So it was it's definitely a very cool area, and I admit that I did not. Probably the first time I'd been in Bridesburg in my life. I mean, I'd probably been there when I was younger. First time I spent a lot of time in Bridesburg was last year. It's a very cool area. I'm Irish, so my last name's Murray. So, you know, I put my Jeff cap on and walked around Bridesburg and got a lot of signatures, a lot of friendly people. And as you know, getting signatures is not fun.
No, it is not. So we were out every night this year getting, you know, just, you know, and it's hard, especially, I'm sure, you know, when you're, you know, an out of left field candidate that no one's ever heard of, you know, it's hard to go and get signatures, but you do what you got to do.
Well, and even in Bridesburg or Port Richmond, that's got a decent percentage of Republicans, but for the most part, you're knocking on every 5th or 6th or 7th door.
Yeah.
And I will tell you from experience, this year was worse than last year. And they said when I got signatures last year, they said it was the worst year ever, meaning it was so hard because people don't answer their doors anymore. People have those Ring doorbells with the camera, so they can see you. They know who you are, meaning they know they don't know you. And so it was really hard. And last year was hard. This year was even harder. I think the more time goes by, the more people are not answering their doors for whatever reason, whether because they have the Ring doorbell, whether they think it's unsafe. I mean, nowadays, imagine if COVID hit us 2 months earlier, we wouldn't be able to get signatures. They would have to change it because you're obviously not knocking on doors, right?
That's something to think about. Yeah.
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 What are you doing? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, you know, I think it's a lot of people mainly just don't feel safe anymore opening their door, especially the later it gets.
Sure. And what are you doing? And I'm running, so I know I'm not doing much, to be honest with you, because when you're running a campaign, normally you're knocking on doors. They say you're knocking on doors, you're shaking hands, you're kissing babies. That's like probably the 3 worst things you could do right now. Because of the pandemic, you're trying to raise money. I'm sure, you know, like me, you're probably not able to raise much money right now because you're not having events, you're not being able to do those types of things. What are you doing for your campaign? What do you wake up and do every day for your campaign?
Right now, I mean, we're just making a lot of phone calls, you know, people in the district, you know, a lot of getting volunteers together for once this thing passes to start doing doors again. You know, honestly, I love talking on the phone to the people in the district, but it's not the same as being face to face with them talking, you know, hearing concerns.
And I'll be honest, I've not done as much phone calling as I should. I'm not a phone guy. I'm more of I'd much rather knock on doors. So for me, picking up the phone, like, it's almost worse than knocking on doors. It is worse. I hate talking.
I was never a phone call guy before I ran for office, man. I've gotten more phone calls in the last 2 months than I have in 25 years.
Yeah, but I'm gonna have to. I mean, I'm starting a little later, only because just like you, I don't have a opponent, and my concentration is going to need to be Democrats. Is so heavily Democrat. So, what issues are you one issue that's number one to you? I mean, you talk about safety a lot. You talk about Larry Krasner. Is that your number one focus, safety and neighborhoods and things like that?
Well, I think that ties into ties into it. My main focus mainly is investment in our youth. Like, and I feel like we need safe neighborhoods for our youth to feel okay growing up in. Like when I was a kid, we used to be able to go outside and be out until the street lights came on. I know you remember what that's like. Like if I had kids today, I would.
Yeah, I actually grew up in Villanova, so it was definitely a much different experience than even what my children are growing up with now, being in the city. But Larry Krasner, anyone who's watched my show, anyone who knows me, I am not a fan of our district attorney, and I am considered a pretty liberal Republican. I'd even say I'm a moderate. But I believe in criminal justice reform. I believe there are problems with our system now. I do believe that too many people are in jail for offenses where I should say they're in jail for too long. For a minor offense, you shouldn't be in jail for years. We need to figure out a way to reduce the recidivism rate because, once people pay their dues to society for their crime, they need to be able to come back and they actually need to be able to get a job. I think there are things that we need to do in our criminal justice system. I'm not a fan of cash bail, and that's probably my moderate side. I don't think whether or not you were able to get out of jail while your case is being heard should depend on your financial situation. And it is a challenging subject. I mean, my opinion there is if you're accused of a violent crime, you should be in jail. That's it.
Agree with
and
that.
You are innocent until proven guilty, but if there's enough evidence against you and the grand jury says there's a trial, you should be in jail. So what are your thoughts on criminal justice reform and Larry Krasner in general?
I agree with you. I think, that there is a skewer in the system. I think, the famous case that came up last year or 2 years ago with the president pardoning Alice Johnson, she was in jail for life for like a minor drug offense. Like that's wrong, frankly. Yeah. There is a lot of work to be done in the criminal justice system. But I think a lot of times, and I think the DA propagates this, is he conflates criminal justice reform with disdain towards law enforcement and police officers. And I think that's where a lot of conflict between the two sides comes in.
True, I 100% agree with you. I mean, the FOP, in my opinion, hey, there are bad people in all walks of life. There are bad people who are teachers. There are bad people who are carpenters. There are bad people who are police officers. The vast majority of our police officers in the city of Philadelphia are good people, and they're laying their lives on the line every single day. And I agree. Larry Krasner does not like police officers. I don't care what he says. I've seen it. I've watched it. You saw what happened, just about a month ago when he went to visit the hospital where the officer was unfortunately passed away, and the FOP wouldn't even let him through. And I was fine with it. I agree with it, actually.
I thought he's proven. Sent a very strong message against the DA,
Yeah, and how can you be a district attorney? How can you be the top prosecutor in the city of Philadelphia or any city when you don't like the police, and because you don't like them, they don't like you? I mean, I think he forgets that he's a chief prosecutor. He still thinks he's a public defender.
And honestly, the big breaking point for me when I said, enough's enough, when I first started, deciding to run was his treatment of Sergeant Robert Wilson's family when that trial came up when he first got sworn in.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's proven over and over again. He doesn't notify victims when they do plea deals. I'm fine with some of the plea deals, but you need to notify the victims. When Michael White was first charged with first-degree murder, if you're familiar with that case, I didn't think it was first-degree murder. I mean, it was a fight. He pulled out a knife. Why he was carrying a knife is arguable, but it wasn't first-degree murder. It wasn't premeditated. But was it second or third? Absolutely. And he kept reducing the degree until literally the night before it was going to trial. And because of that, Michael White wasn't convicted at all. He was not guilty. I think he was found guilty of tampering with evidence. So he murdered someone, and it was a fight. And, I don't think it was first-degree murder, but he certainly should have gone to jail. And he spent no time in jail other than the time he served. And the victims are never notified. And every time he does this, Larry Krasner apologizes, and he normally blames someone else in his office for not notifying the victims, but he's done it over and over again. And after a while, maybe once it happens, you can say, okay, there was a mistake made. But when he does it over and over again, he's doing it purposely.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just horrible.
Yeah, well, I mean, perfect example. Probably his most famous case was how he treated Maureen Faulkner when he made it possible for Officer Daniel Faulkner's killer to get an appeal.
Yeah, is numerous and one of many, many appeals. And I agree with you. I mean, Mumia is either guilty or he knows who's guilty. He was there. He admitted he was there. I think he's guilty. Personally, I think he's guilty. I don't believe in the death penalty. I'm actually against it. I'm very pro-life, but the main reason I believe that I'm against the death penalty is because you can't ever, if there's a mistake made, you obviously can't go back and fix that mistake. If someone's in jail for life, even if it's a horrible thing that that person went to jail for life, after 20 years, if DNA evidence proves him innocent, which happens a lot now that we do have that level of certainty with DNA, the person can be let out of jail. If you murder someone, if you kill someone by the death penalty, that's not the case. So it's irreversible. So that's my Democrat side. A lot of Republicans are like, how can you be against the death penalty? But that's my moderate to liberal side.
I think with the death penalty, you need absolutely undeniable evidence. And because I think you're right. There's been a lot of instances in the past where they executed somebody and it turned out that they were innocent.
Sure, and you can't obviously you can't reverse that. And so I'd say err on the side of caution and say put someone in jail for life. And so going back to Mumia, I don't believe he should be put to death. He should be in jail for the rest of his life, and they should just stop the appeal process. And Larry Krasner could have helped that, and he chose not to. He chose to step aside and allow yet another appeal that Maureen has to deal with, when Maureen should be able to, move on with her life.
She's been
30
fighting
years
this fight
later.
for almost 40 years now. She's been fighting this fight.
Yeah.
It's not right.
And he just over and over again, he sides with criminals, and he is a public defender. So I guess we bashed Larry Krasner enough. Well, maybe we'll come back to that because I don't have much of a problem. I never have much of a problem bashing him. But you talked about kids and growing up in the city, how things are different. What type of programs before when we were talking before we came on air, you were talking about different programs, trade schools, parks and recreation programs. What type of programs you want to start when they're younger? Like what type of parks and rec programs did you maybe even use growing up in Port Richmond, or what do you want to see get better in the city?
Well, I think the big thing, for not for little, but like for kids in high school and like junior college, I think those kids. I think my main goal is I want to put a trade school in the district.
Okay.
Like a fully rounded trade school, plumbing, electrical, carpentry, HVAC, all that good stuff, And I want to be able to train them for careers in well-paying industries that we're experiencing shortages in right now.
Sure. And it's interesting. I mean, my belief is that everyone should have the opportunity to go to college if they choose to do so. But not everyone should go to college. There are people who, if you want to be an electrician, then you should go to a trade school, and you can make almost $100,000 a year being an electrician right away, probably around 80,000. I mean, if you're a union electrician, your wage is about $45 an hour plus benefits. I think there's a stigmatism that we put on trades, and then we shouldn't do it, right? It's, as you said, there is a shortage, and it is a great way to make a good living, a well-paying living. And if you do go to trade school, you come out with zero debt, and you're normally making more money let's say when you're 21 years old than people coming out of college at 21.
And I do also feel like a lot of kids in high school that don't know what they want to do with their future. There's such a burden put on them that they feel they have to go to college, and they feel they have to sink themselves hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt to make something of themselves. When, like you said, if we put that same kind of emphasis on trade schools, there wouldn't be this massive student debt problem that we have now.
Sure. No, I 100% agree with you. I think, I think we tell kids that they have to go to college. You have to go to college. And look, I'm not dissimilar. I mean, my children, in my mind, my children are going to college. My daughters are going to college. Growing up, I'm one of five. We were going to college. It wasn't even a thought process. And that's why I went to a prep school. You went to Roman Catholic, and I went to St. Joe's Prep. the thought is that you are going to go to college. And I had some debt coming out of college. I did, not hundreds of thousands, but you know, there are too many kids coming out of high school who just think, oh, I'm supposed to go to college.
Yeah.
I'm not as intelligent as the other people in my class, the other people in my school, if I don't go to college. And the bottom line is, some of these people who do go into the trades maybe a little bit smarter than those who go to college because they come out with, as you said, with zero debt and making very good money at a very young age.
Listen, I went to Temple. I got my diploma on the wall right here. I'm very proud of the fact that I graduated from Temple. But at the same time, I also saw a lot of kids, start at college and they didn't know what they wanted to do. But since trade
Mhm.
schools are so frowned upon and community college is so frowned upon, and like the high schools, that these kids feel they need to go to a college that costs 40, 50, $60,000 a year to, and they're going in undecided.
Yeah.
Like, what's
So
the
yeah, well, I didn't know you're a Temple Owl. I'm a Temple Owl as well, but I went to grad school at Temple, so I'm still a Villanova Wildcat basketball fan. So
and again, won't hold that against you.
yeah, that's right. Well, I grew up in Villanova, and we do have 3 championships to Temple's 0, but Temple's my number 2 team, I say. Um, so how about parks? So we talked a little bit about parks and recreation, and this is more of a city issue, but it's something that will come up if we ever get out on the campaign trail, because right now we're not talking to our constituents too much. But again, this is a city issue, but it does go into the state a little bit because it is a tax that theoretically should have been approved by the state legislature, which is the soda tax. And the reason people say it should have been approved, a retail tax actually has to be approved by the state legislature. Now, what Mayor Kenny did, and it was very smart of him. I'm not going to, he wanted the soda tax. So what he did was, instead of it being a retail tax, he taxed the distributors. So basically, it's the same. It does the same thing. The stores, the distributors, theoretically don't have to pass along that cost, but they're going to because it's a large tax. That is why the state legislature didn't have the ability to say yes or no to the soda tax. What are your thoughts on the soda tax? Because the bottom line is, and I'll tell you my thought, because maybe that'll make it a little easier to answer this question. I am opposed to the soda tax. I think we tax things way too much in the city of Philadelphia. But what is good about the soda tax is it provides funding for universal pre-K, which I am in favor of, and it provides money for the rebuild program for parks and recreation, and the rebuild program is, as the name sounds, it's renovating and rebuilding existing parks and recreation centers in the city of Philadelphia. So I say I am opposed to the soda tax, but I'm 100% in favor of what the soda tax funds. So what are your thoughts on the soda tax?
Like I said, I obviously, like, you can't be opposed to the things that's funding. You want more pre-K for kids. You want better school buildings, better parks. But the soda tax itself is a sham. I absolutely despise it. And it's doing more harm than good. So many businesses have shuttered their doors because of this thing. And I mean, like you said, we're already taxed way more than we should be. Our property taxes in the city are through the roof. And I mean, and there is no real enforcement on where the soda tax money is going, from what I can tell. So, I mean, if we're going to be burdened with this thing, put more enforcement on it.
Yeah. So there's not as that a lot of people, the money is going into the general fund. A lot of people will say, well, it's going to general fund, and that means it's not going to where it's supposed to be. What I explain to people is there's a reason it's going to the general fund. The parks on the rebuild side, it takes a long time to renovate these buildings, especially with the government, because municipal government, nothing goes fast. So a lot of reason the money is going to the general fund. And I tell a lot of Republicans this who hate the tax. The reason it's going to the general fund is not because it's going to sit in the general fund forever, but because the money is being collected and they're actually doing something responsible. They're not spending the money until they have the money. So as soon as they have enough money to renovate, for example, Park A, then they'll start the process for renovating that park. Now that park is probably not renovated for at least a year because of the process that needs to go through in the design, in the community outreach. The community outreach takes a long time. The community outreach probably takes at least, at a minimum, 6 months for community outreach, and then the planning begins. So normally the planning design period, which normally would take in the commercial world of a project, might take 6 months. It takes probably at least a year to 18 months. And they're not really even starting that process. Now, if they were intelligent, they would start the process before they have the money, even if that means not spending money that you don't have, but they should be able to forecast what money is coming in and plan ahead and start the process already, but that's not what they're doing. So that's why the money's going to the general fund. And most people don't understand that. And so, and most Republicans don't. And in fact, when I was running for city council last year, a lot of people would say this, and I would say, oh, that's actually not accurate. But so that's why. So we talked about the soda tax. Any other issues specifically? And again, this is a tough question because when you're running a campaign like last year, when you first start, you kind of know your platform and you kind of know what direction you're going to go, but you go a lot of events and your platform, your focus changes because you hear what you're hearing from the constituents, what they want, what's important to them. So this might be a hard question, but any other specific issues that you're beginning to hear from now that you are making phone calls and talking to people, when you got signatures, anything that jumped out at you?
Well, I've said before in interviews, the biggest issue that I heard when I was, going door to door for petitions were drug usage in the city and the safe injection sites. When we were doing petitions, that was the hot button issue before
Sure.
it changed over to coronavirus. But the injection site, I mean, that I firmly believe that issue hasn't gone away, and I believe it's going to come up again once this whole thing passes. And
Sure.
going to try opening another center like they did down in South Philly, which I think is where I actually met you for the first time.
Yes. Yeah. No, it is where. Yeah, we had a Republican protest against the safe injection site in South Philadelphia. So I guess I'm going to make the assumption that you're opposed to these two safe injection sites.
100%. I think
Yep.
I believe that the drug problem in the city is outrageous. There's so much drug use out there, and I live a mile down the road from ground zero with this thing, Kensington. So
Mhm.
like I'll be walking up the street, and even when I work at St. Anne's Church down there, and every day, I'm cleaning needles off the steps, and it's just sad, man. But
Sure.
we need proper treatment and rehabilitation. We can't be enabling this behavior like these injection sites seek to do.
Sure. And this is a state issue, right? Because it is. So the way Philadelphia tried to handle it was at a municipal level. Um, but the state does have the ability to stop this. So it is a state issue, right? And I agree. I'm opposed to these sites. Personally, I believe that addiction is a disease. Um, but you use the word enabling, and I've talked to addicts, and I asked them. Not everyone has been opposed to it, but when I ran last year, I talked to a lot of people who came up to me after, because that was a huge issue last year for city council. I say it was safe injection sites, the soda tax, and sanctuary city were the three biggest issues you heard. And people would come to me, and including a lot of people who were recovering addicts, and they said to me, if I would say 90% of the people who did come to me, who were recovering addicts, said that they were opposed to them. And they said, if one even said, if there was a safe injection site when I was trying to get out of the cycle of addiction, this person said I'd be dead, because you said it enables people, and it also normalizes drug use, right? It says, it's not only saying, hey, we'll help you do it. It's almost like, hey, I'm sitting here and I'm looking all around me, and there are nurses, there are people, and they're trying to do the right thing. I would never say anything bad against the people who are trying to open these sites, because I think they are trying to do a good thing. I know they're trying to do a good thing. But when you normalize drug use, you're telling a person, hey, it's okay what you're doing. And you might be saving them in that instance, which they are. There's never been a person who died inside a safe injection site, but you're killing yourself every time you put a needle into your body. So I agree with you. I'm 100% opposed to these sites.
And like you said, I mean, I've said this before. It's you open these sites up for supervised injection, and you get someone from the suburbs coming down who, otherwise wouldn't, or someone even in the city who otherwise wouldn't have done drugs out of fear of, overdosing alone. Now
Sure.
you've given them a place to safely go shoot up when otherwise they wouldn't have done it out of fear. Now you've given them, you've normalized it to the point that they can go and do it.
Sure. And I've read the studies. So that's the first thing people will say when they're debating. Have you read the studies? And I have. I've read the studies, and some things that, and most of the studies are done. Well, all studies are biased, right? So when someone says, I'm going to do a study, it's rarely non-biased. So most of the studies that have been done are been done by people who want to have safe injection sites. Uh, but I've read through them, and what's missing oftentimes, number one, they will say no one has ever died inside a safe injection site, which is accurate. But oftentimes, those who are taken out of that site in an ambulance, they could have died at a hospital, and they don't count that as part of a death inside a safe injection site. And the second thing, and actually more important to me, is if these sites, people who are for these sites will say, we need to save them today in order for them to get off the cycle addiction tomorrow. We can't save someone who's dead, right? So I've looked at these studies, and I want to see, this person A was in a safe injection site January 1, 2019. By January 1, 2020, he or she is in a rehab, or maybe has completely been drug-free for 6 months. I've never read that once. So to me, the argument is of saving them today so we can get them into rehab tomorrow. It's not applicable, or at least the studies are not showing that even happens.
I've heard the arguments. I've read the same studies probably that you have. I do believe that they care about these people that are addicted. I do believe they have their best interests at heart, but I believe this injection site issue is a short-term solution to a very complicated problem.
Sure. And that's the first thing people will say. We'll say, well, if this is not the answer, then what is the answer? And it is tough. I'm not a professional, but I will say we have to revamp our rehab system. I know in the city of Philadelphia, for example, this sounds trivial, but you're not allowed to smoke in the rehab facilities, and that's crazy. Let's take smoking's bad for you. Don't get me wrong, but let's take one step at a time. Let's deal with the worst drug, right? Let's deal with the heroin addiction first, or whatever addiction it is, and not worrying about smoking.
Yeah.
Because what do people do who are on heroin? I'd say most of them will say that they also smoke. So they're not going to go on a rehab site if it means they aren't allowed to smoke. So just let them smoke. And that's actually a huge issue that I've heard from people who are addicts or who are trying to get out of the cycle of addiction, that they aren't allowed in the city of Philadelphia to smoke in the rehab center. So just something as simple as that. Get rid of that barrier to someone actually going into a rehab site.
Yeah, and like you said, we need to focus on the bigger problem first, and then we can start worrying about that.
Worry about number one problem at a time, right?
Yeah.
And I can't imagine something that's a larger problem than a heroin addiction. And the other side, so I say the reason I'm opposed to it, safe injection sites. There's two reasons. I think it does enable the user, and I think it normalizes drug addiction. But it's also, you got to look at it, and then maybe this is the selfish side of my opinion. You got to look at the communities where these are going to be placed. You cannot tell me it does not negatively affect the immediate community. And the argument, they'll say in Kensington, look at Kensington. It's not going to increase the drug use in Kensington because that's impossible. It's already such an incredible problem, but it is going to bring it and concentrate it even more. If you have a safe injection site, they're all going to be right there. It's going to hurt that community. If the drug dealers, it's supply and demand. They're going to go where their customers are. And so the drug dealers are going to go to those neighborhoods. And, my opinion is, I live in the Logan Square section of Philadelphia. If I wouldn't want it in my community, if I don't want it near my children, if I don't want it near my house, then I shouldn't want it or allow it or enable it to any community in the city of Philadelphia, whether that's Kensington or if it's South Philadelphia, where the first place was.
And that was the whole thing about that was the scary thing about them opening that South Philly site, was they did it behind the community's back. They didn't do any community outreach. They didn't get anybody involved in it. They just said they were opening it. And to me, that's government overstep right there.
Yeah, well, and they say it was an as of right project. So I don't know. And so I come from the zoning world. I was president of our local civic. From a zoning standpoint, for the most part, you can't dig a hole in the city of Philadelphia without community input, without going to the local neighborhood association, the local RCO. And they said that it was an as of right project, basically, that they didn't have to seek community input. And my argument was, how can you have an as of right medical facility, is what they were calling it, that is illegal. Because the bottom line is it's not legal in the state of Pennsylvania or in the country to do these drugs. So how did they not require a variance of any kind, which would have forced them to go to the community, which they knew they should have done. Whether they not they legally had to do it is questionable, I guess. But they did it in Kensington. They went to many community meetings when they felt like it was too hard to get by that hurdle. That's why they decided to go to South Philadelphia and just do it behind closed doors and saying, if you remember, it was like, we're opening the site next week.
Yep, I remember. And that building had a daycare in it, if I remember correctly, too.
Yeah, there's a daycare. There's South Philly High is right down the street. And it is, and look, and the argument will be that if you go outside that facility at Broad and McKean, there's already a drug problem there. And there is. I mean, if you walk around, up and down Broad Street a few blocks, you'll see a lot of users. You'll see some discarded needles, but you can't tell me it's not going to get worse if it's even put inside a facility. And what happens, what happens after the people do drugs and they're high and they're allowed to leave? There's never a rule that says, okay, when these people are down from their high, and I've never taken heroin, I don't know how long that high lasts, but what happens when these people leave the site? What if they jump in a car? What if they hurt somebody? You're obviously not in your right mind when you're high on heroin. But what happens when they hurt someone, and who's responsible for that?
And not even that. I mean, just the you're absolutely right, but not even just that. You open the site in South Philly, and then there's a bad drug problem there. What happens? All the addicts in Kensington are going to come down.
Sure, no, it's going to get worse. You're going to concentrate it.
You're either going to get more, or they're going to see that they're not moving down there. So the people, say, from Kensington aren't coming down. So they're going to try to open another one in Kensington then after that.
No, yeah, it's interesting. I would talk to people in my neighborhood. So I live in Logan Square, which is, if you're not familiar where that is, or and the listeners aren't, it's basically right near the Art Museum. It's the neighborhood that surrounds the Benjamin Franklin Parkway. And I would talk to people when I was running for city council. A lot of my neighbors, I'm very involved civically. They would say, "Oh, well, I am for these safe injection sites." I talked to Councilwoman Gim, who's a friend of mine. Could not be further apart on many issues, but I would talk to people in our neighborhood and I would say, "Are you for these sites?" And they say, "Yes." And I said, "Okay, what's going to happen when it comes to Logan Square?" Because people think it's going to be in Kensington. In their mind, that was the only place it was going to be.
Yeah.
I agree. It's going to go South Philadelphia, Kensington. The third location, and I tell people who live in Center City, I said Center City is going to be one of the spots. And some of these people I talk to is like, "Well, I don't want it in my neighborhood." I said, "Well, if you don't want it in your neighborhood, why would you allow it in another neighborhood?" Like, "Well, we have children here. We have schools." I'm like, there are children in Kensington. There are schools in Kensington. There is not a neighborhood in the city of Philadelphia that doesn't have children in schools. So why would you want, why is it okay for another neighborhood instead of, but not in Center City, not
And I feel like, areas like Kensington and they tend to lump the river wards in there with them. I feel like these sections of the city are really overlooked by people. They assume we're all just like a barren wasteland.
Yeah, no, and Kensington, look, in Kensington, there absolutely are problems. And I have not been there, obviously, since the pandemic has started, but my guess is it's only exacerbated and it's only worse. Because we'll go back to Larry Krasner. And actually our police commissioner, because she said, well, we're not going to arrest people for certain crimes. And drug use was one of them. Prostitution was one of them.
Which
And
not even made public.
I agree. You know what? They probably had, for the safety of the police officers, they probably had to do that, right? They had to stop, what I'll say, the crime against the victimless crime. You're obviously hurting yourself, whether whether prostitution or drug use, and maybe petty theft. To protect our police officers, I agree with it, but it should never have been made public. It should never have been written down. It should have been a verbal policy that was told to the captains in each district of the city of Philadelphia. And not only did they put it in writing, it was obviously, whether it was made public on purpose by the police commissioner and Larry Krasner, or if it was just put in writing and it was leaked, it should never have been made public.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think Philadelphia and New York were the two cities that did it. And I mean, yeah, maybe major crimes went down because everyone was indoors, but these petty crimes, from what I saw in the statistics, they were going up.
Yeah, well, and even major, we are even though everyone's inside, murder hasn't stopped, and we're we're I believe we're past 100. We're on pace. I think we're 10% higher than last year in murders.
Yeah.
Last year was an increase in murders. You know, where most large cities in the country, violent crime is decreasing. Our crime is increasing. I 100% without a doubt blame our district attorney Larry Krasner, because I think criminals are like, you know what? If we get caught, we're not gonna, the sentence isn't gonna be as severe as it would have been under someone like Lynn Abraham.
Yeah, I agree. I put this solely at the foot of Larry Kratzer, and I know U.S. Attorney Bill McSwain has been trying to keep him in check the last several months, if not years, at this point. So I fully support McSwain in his efforts to do that.
No, I agree. Normally I would say, you kind of let municipalities handle their own backyards and not have the influence from at a state or federal level in McSwain's circumstance. But when Larry Krasner is not prosecuting criminals, then I am 100% fine with the feds coming in.
I mean, he's endangering the welfare of the city, to be blunt.
Sure. And now with COVID-19, there's another big issue, and it's a hot issue that I see all the time, and it is releasing criminals, either whether it's early or because of their age, many different reasons. And I look at it, and at its face, it doesn't sound like a big deal. And for crimes that maybe are not as serious, but that's not what's happening, right? And we've heard it around the country in a lot of these cities who have let people out of jail early. Number one, putting criminals in jail, yes, it keeps the public safe, but it's also paying your dues to society, right? So if they let out nonviolent offenders, at a minimum, they got to go back after this pandemic is over, because they need to pay their debt to society. Even if you're in jail for 2 years and they let you out because it's a minor offense, and I understand the reasoning for letting people out of jail, because it's also keeping the correction officers safer as well, right? So, but if you're let out a year early when this pandemic's over, you got to go back, right? You got to pay your debt to society. And I read somewhere, it was actually brought in Liberty, that another reason or another category of letting people out early are older people. And when you hear older people, you make the assumption, 75, maybe over 70, but their age for older people was 45. I'm 48. That means anybody over 45, they were saying, should be let out of jail because they're more susceptible to this virus. So I'm 100% fine with letting very low offenders, non-violent offenders out, as long as they go back. What are your thoughts about the whole letting anyone out early?
I mean, my issue was more of when I heard they were doing it, it was they're telling us to stay in our houses because they're afraid that we're catching it from someone here and spreading it, and yet they're taking prisoners who are in such a confined, crowded space, and they're releasing them back into the general public. Like, that just didn't make sense to me if they're trying to contain the virus by letting people who were in such close quarters back out in the society.
Sure, at a minimum, they should be tested. And then if let's say they do let them out, they need to be tested prior to letting them out. And obviously, if they test positive, they need to be quarantined in some fashion. And they test negative, let out, again, non-violent offenders. But any of those offenders need to be placed back in jail once this pandemic's over.
How are they supposed to track these people down once they're out,
And that was another challenge as well. And this, where are they going when they get out? Not all of them have the ability to go to a home. So they might be homeless anyway, or, and you've also heard about circumstances of people being let out and committing crime. One I heard was murder. One I heard in New York, as soon as this guy was let out, he went and robbed somebody and he robbed an elderly man and broke his hand. So, I think it's already been proven that when these people are being let out, they're going right back to the life of crime that they had been doing before they went to jail, or what caused them to go to jail.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the relapse system for inmates released in not only the city but this country as a whole is very high, and I think we were talking about criminal justice reform earlier. I think that's a big key of that is rehabilitation in the prison, so this relapse isn't as bad when they are released.
No, absolutely. And once you do pay your debts to society, we need programs that get them jobs when they come out, maybe, and programs when they're in jail to help educate them more. So when they get out, they have the ability to do jobs. We don't have those programs. And when you don't have those programs, I'd rather spend money while they're in jail helping educate them rather than bring them back, have them come back to jail because they don't have the ability to get a job.
Absolutely.
We need to help, once they pay their debt to society, we need to help them when they come out. We need to help them get jobs. And do something so they don't go back to jail, because it costs a lot more money to have someone in jail than it is to try to educate them to keep them out of jail.
Yeah. And I think, help them with job placement. Absolutely. Because I think the other thing we see is a lot of people come out of prison and then either they go right back to prison or they become entirely dependent on government benefits. And I think that's because there is no job placement and there is no, like you said, real education available for what to do once you get back outside of prison.
Sure. And so keeping with, we have a few more minutes. We'll kind of keep with the COVID-19 topic. Just I think it was yesterday, and this is absolutely this day because the state legislature, and it was basically on party lines, and it will go to the Senate next. They voted to basically open up the state of Pennsylvania from a business standpoint. And I don't know if you read the article. What are your thoughts? I mean, here are my thoughts. I'll say my thoughts first. I'm okay with some businesses opening, and I think it needs to be a stepped approach. And here's an example. I can personally work from home. I don't have to go out. So anyone who can work from home and still gets a paycheck, at least in the near term, and I don't know what that definition is, a month, maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's 3 months, just keep working from home. Schools are going to be, they're already out. They're already not going back to school for this school year. So let's hopefully get them back into school in September. But jobs that can open up right now, like construction sites. I would open up construction sites, maybe not tomorrow, but I would say May 1. And those types of jobs where you can, to a degree, keep social distancing. I would open them right away. What are your thoughts on? And when I say it was not a single Democrat in the state legislature voted yes. What are your thoughts about opening up the state? Let's just say May 1 for business.
Well, first of all, I just think it's a disgrace that people are turning this into a partisan issue. We should be focused on the betterment of our state and our country, not drawing party lines in the sand here on this thing. But
Sure.
I think we're safe. I think we absolutely need to reopen business, need to reopen the economy. I was just looking at this morning before we got on the air, numbers for the entire state countywide. There's counties out in the Midwestern PA that have two reported cases. Why are their businesses all forced to shut down? Like, I get Philadelphia, we have far and above the highest percentage. But I mean, I think slowly, like you said, just need to, where it's safe, start reopening businesses.
Yeah, and construction is, and then especially outdoor construction, right?
Yeah.
There are ways to keep social distancing, and they can wear masks. Restaurants, those types of businesses, which are one of probably the most important to open. I don't know if we're there yet because they are such close quarters, but maybe there are ways to slowly open them. Obviously, they're already allowed to do takeout now. Maybe there are ways that they can open up and have tables that are 10 feet apart. I don't know. I would be in favor of that as long as, and I say May 1. If we're decreasing as of May 1, I think we plateaued in the city of Philadelphia from what it looks like. If now those cases do start to decrease, and that's evidence on May 1, I'd say start opening all businesses. Let's get back to the norm, because unemployment could cause as much death or more death than this horrible virus.
And just on the graph I was looking at this morning, Pennsylvania as a whole is in decline already. So like you said, I think we plateaued already. I think it's only going to start getting better from here. And I implore the governor and the state house to keep pushing forward to reopen businesses as soon as it's safe.
Yeah, definitely liquor stores. I think they got to open liquor stores right away. They're going to start it. they're going to start being mass break-ins of liquor stores if they don't open those.
Yeah. I was shocked. They boarded them. There's one down in the neighborhood here. It was literally boarded all the way around. I was
Oh yeah, I'm sure they had to. People will break into those in a second.
like, oh yeah.
But I do think they should open up liquor stores. And again, there are ways to keep social distancing. You just, I go to Trader Joe's once a week. You stand outside for an hour, 6 feet apart, waiting to get into the store because they only let a certain amount of people in at a time. And when you're inside the store, it's a little more challenging. But they should be able to do it for liquor stores and beer distributors. I think people are probably running out. I give up drinking for Lent, so I've been pretty good up until now because I haven't had a drink since Ash Wednesday. But tell you what, this weekend I'm going to open up a beer and a bottle of wine for sure.
Have fun with that.
Yes. Yeah. So I think we're if you see me looking at the side, I'm looking at my clock. I think we're coming to toward the end. So I want to first thank you for coming on to my show. I want you to I wish you good luck. Obviously, you don't have to worry about the primary, but good luck come November. Hopefully, we are voting in person come November. And I wish you all the luck in your campaign.
Thank you for having me on, Drew. I appreciate it, and good luck to you as well.
Wow, thank you. So you've been listening to Oosaloo Radio and the Republican Zone. Thanks for listening. Stay safe and stay home.